You are getting weaker every day, and it is having an impact on your running. I'm Lindsay Perry from CoachPerry.com, where we help you get fitter, faster and stronger. And today we are going to unpack sarcopenia and the impact that it is having on your running.
Alright, let's look in general terms. What happens when we age? What happens physiologically as we go through the aging process? And I'm going to stop anyone there who's in their 30s, because you might think, oh, I don't have to deal with this. Nowhere near 50 yet. The process is starting now. I'm 37, and that is quite a concerning thing. A lot of the aging process starts as early as our 30s. Our aerobic capacity goes down and we tend to lose lean muscle mass. What does that really mean? What is actually happening? Your heart is a muscle, and as we get older, your stroke volume goes down. So what does that mean? It's just essentially the amount of blood your heart can pump around your body, that decreases. Your heart rate decreases as well. And so what that means is your aerobic capacity will also decrease as well. You also then tend to lose lean muscle mass progressively, or there's a nice natural decline over the years, and that tends to then exacerbate or go into a rapid decline as we get closer towards 50 and beyond. And Lindsay's going to touch on a lot of that in a lot more detail for you now.
So what exactly is sarcopenia? Sarcopenia is the loss of strength through the loss of muscle mass that happens particularly as we get older. That process is very gradual when we are in our late 20s and 30s, and it increases as we get older if we do not do anything about it. And now that we know what sarcopenia is, what is the impact on you as a runner? Okay? As you go through life losing muscle mass and losing strength, you are not able to generate the same amount of force as you were before. So it's going to have a material impact on your performance as a runner. The second impact is that in order to try and get to the same levels as you were before, you are trying to produce the same amount of force with less, which means that those muscles are actually working harder and you are doing more damage. That impacts in your recovery time. So essentially, sarcopenia has the effect of having both a loss of performance and secondly increasing your risk of injury because you're compromising your recovery times. So it is critical that we try to reverse the effects of sarcopenia, or at the very least slow it down, because that will help your performance as a runner. It'll reduce your injury risk and it'll keep you running pain-free and consistently.
The literature or the science has really defined, this loss of aerobic capacity, and they've called it aerobic frailty, and they've defined that as a point in time where your VO2 max is less than 18 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Okay, so I know that's a bit of an odd number, but that is a very low VO2 max, and that is the point at which they define what we call aerobic frailty. The science has shown that if you've been active through your entire life, that aerobic frailty point for you happens 30 years later versus someone who's been sedentary or hasn't done any activity through their entire life. So what does that mean? It means that an 85-year-old who has been active throughout his life or her life will have the same VO2 max as someone who's 55 years old. And so you really are going to push that aging process to happen so much later in life for you. Unfortunately, and when it comes to lean muscle mass, we can't reverse these effects as much. The rate at which we lose lean muscle mass is always going to be the same, but we can offset that or try and reverse it by adding lean muscle mass. So by doing strength training, you are going to allow for yourself to almost subset or offset that general kind of loss that is inevitable and is always going to happen. Science has shown that if, let's say we take two people, and one person is active all the way through and does strength training all the way through their life, and the other person does nothing, essentially an 80-year-old who does a lot of activity and does strength training is going to have the same amount of muscle mass as a 55-year-old who does nothing. And so these are tools that you can use to better your life as we get older. It is very, very clear in the science that an increase in mortality is linked to a low aerobic capacity and low lean muscle mass. And so again, this is just speaking beyond running and really just talking life and health and general sort of well-being. And so let's continue to be active, let's continue to do strength training so that we don't age as quickly as life wants us to. There's many pharmaceutical companies and businesses around the world who are trying to create, you know, the next best thing in terms of stopping aging, when we actually have the answers right in front of us. And I love the saying that sort of says, you know, if exercise came in a pill form, we would all be taking it. And so I really think we need to start looking at running and strength training, or exercise, if you want to put it in that sort of term, as chronic medication and something that's going to help you through this aging process, all through your life. And really the most important thing is that it starts now. It starts as early as your 30s so that you can give yourself the best chance as we get older.
To drive home the point of why it is so important to counter the impact of sarcopenia, I'm going to give you an idea of what that muscle loss and strength loss looks like as you age. So in our 30s, we are looking at losing between 1 and 3% muscle mass and strength per decade, and that starts to accelerate in our 50s to going as high as 5% per decade. What that means in absolute or real terms is that between our 30th birthday and our 80th birthday, we can lose between 20 and 40% of our muscle mass, which has an enormous impact on our ability to perform, generate force, and on our musculoskeletal coordination. So the sooner you start to do something about sarcopenia, the sooner you start implementing strategies in your training, like strength training, the less compromised you will be by sarcopenia as you age. And it really is the secret to being able to run as long as you want to enjoy the health benefits of running.
Is there a big difference between males and females within this aging process? And for the most part, no. The principles remain the same. The physiological impacts are the same. However, for females, the main difference is that the loss of lean muscle mass, or that loss of strength, becomes a lot more exaggerated as you get beyond 50. That is a lot more exaggerated for females as it is compared to men. And so strength training becomes absolutely pivotal in your training regime the closer you get to 50 and beyond. And again, just to reiterate that we want to start that now, because if you start now, you're going to land yourself up here as opposed to down here with that natural degeneration that's going to happen.
The solution, very simply, is to make sure that you include strength training as part of your overall mix in the program. I have this conversation over and over and over again with people, and that is that becoming a better runner does not always entail running more, and you will get more benefits out of your training by adding strength training in. The sooner you add strength training into your plan, the sooner you can firstly reverse the effects of sarcopenia. And that's very important, is that you can actually get stronger in the short term, and then the long-term implications are obviously that you will hold on to those strength gains for decades to come. And eventually, when we get into our 60s and 70s and we start to lose strength at a rate that we cannot stop some loss of strength, you will minimize that loss of strength. So the answer is to do strength training. The literature talks about doing strength training 3 days a week. For me, it's not critical about the number of times you do strength training. If you've got time in your program to do 3 days a week, that's great. As you get into peak training times, that might make you a little bit too tired, so you may want to cut it down in peak training. To simplify it, the saying that we use at coachparry.com is that 3 days a week is ideal, 2 days of strength a week is better than one, and 1 day of strength a week is way better than doing no strength at all. The good news is that at coachparry.com we've put together a free strength training program just for you. You can click on the link on screen right now and get started with your strength training.
this video hit a nerve and you realize that this is something you want to look at, we're doing a masterclass on this exact topic that is going to help you to run well and faster all the way through your 50s, 60s and beyond. And so if you're interested in that, you can click on the link that's on screen now to book your seat. And if you got any value, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel.